The story begins with a man named Will arriving in Spain, excitement lighting up his face as he prepares to reunite with his family for a long-awaited vacation. His father, Martin, greets him warmly at the airport, and the two begin their journey to a waiting boat, chatting and catching up. As they travel, Will's phone rings. It's a call from work. But knowing how much his father dislikes being interrupted by work matters during family time, Will politely asks the caller to give him a break. Martin notices and appreciates this small but meaningful gesture. When they finally arrive at the dock, Will's mother, Lori, his younger brother Josh, and Josh's girlfriend Dara greet him with cheerful smiles and open arms. Everyone is in high spirits, eager to enjoy a relaxing evening together. A special family dinner is planned to celebrate the reunion, and as they gather around the table, laughter fills the air. The brothers share memories of their childhood, remembering how they moved frequently due to Martin's mysterious job. Lori beams with joy at having her whole family under one roof again. They raise their glasses in a heartfelt toast, cherishing the rare moment of togetherness. But just as the evening settles into warmth and nostalgia, Josh brings up a comical story from Will's past, causing a round of loud laughter. The lightheartedness, however, is abruptly disrupted when Will receives a distressing phone call. His face turns serious, the color drains from his cheeks, and a quiet unease ripples across the table. He finally breaks the silence and shares the devastating news. His company has gone bankrupt. The room falls into a heavy stillness. Uncertainty clouds the mood, and Will steps away from the table, walking quietly toward the seaside to collect his thoughts. Later that night, Will tries to make amends for dampening the atmosphere. He finds Martin and apologizes for bringing tension into their happy reunion. In an emotional exchange, Martin also expresses his sorrow, recognizing how difficult the situation must be for his son. It's a rare, vulnerable moment between father and son, filled with mutual respect and empathy. The next morning, the family sets sail on the open sea. But while the sun sparkles on the water and the wind whispers gently, Will remains glued to his constantly ringing phone. Though he reluctantly takes part in steering the yacht, his mind is clearly elsewhere. After dropping anchor, his distraction becomes dangerous. When Martin urgently asks him to help steer the boat again, Will is too absorbed in his phone to notice a fast-approaching motorboat speeding directly toward them. Will's delayed reaction allows the yacht to drift aimlessly, carried by the wind. Martin, sensing the danger, panics and yells at Will just in time. Will snaps out of it and narrowly manages to regain control, preventing a possible crash that could have injured Dara. In a fit of anger and frustration, Martin grabs Will's phone and throws it into the ocean. A heated argument erupts between father and son. Emotions flare, and in a bold, impulsive move, Will dives into the sea, swimming away toward the distant town, needing space to breathe. Soaked and weary, Will first stops at a pharmacy to buy antiseptic for Dara's injury, showing that he still deeply cares for his family despite the tension. He then grabs a drink to quench his thirst and gazes out at the wide, endless ocean, lost in thought. But peace doesn't last long. That same ominous speedboat reappears, causing Martin back on the yacht to feel a sudden wave of dread. Eventually, Will returns to the shore, but the yacht is nowhere in sight. Panic sets in. He asks the nearby beachgoers for help, but their fast Spanish is hard to understand. Determined, he enters the water and swims to a group of young locals, hoping for clarity. But their words are as incomprehensible as the crash of the waves. Fear grows inside him. Did his family leave him behind by accident? Will walks along the coast for a better view. Then, bathed in the silver glow of moonlight, he spots the family yacht adrift and empty. He swims to it and boards cautiously. Everything is eerily silent. The boat has no power. His family is gone. Desperate, Will rushes to the nearest police station. Inside, officers lazily play cards, uninterested in his story. Frustrated, Will finally gets the attention of the station's captain. When the captain hears Will's name, his demeanor changes. He makes a phone call, now suddenly serious. Under the cover of darkness, police officers accompany Will back to the yacht's last known location. Along the way, they meet a stranger who claims to know Will and offers to help. But Will feels uneasy and senses something off. He tries to run. The officers restrain him, a struggle breaks out, and Will breaks free. He steals a police car and speeds into the night, pursued by flashing lights and shouting sirens. The chase ends when the police corner him, causing him to crash the vehicle. The officers pull him out and begin beating him. Just as it seems Will won't make it, Martin appears like a ghost in the night and takes the officers down in a swift, brutal fight. He pulls his bruised son to safety. Will, trembling, asks what happened to Josh and Lori. Martin, face pale with worry, confesses a dark secret. He's a CIA agent. He believes someone from his past has returned to harm them, putting the entire family at risk. With a heavy heart, he says he's sorry, again and again, each word more sincere than the last. Then, his phone buzzes. It's a message from a CIA contact. They're to meet in secret. Martin takes Will to one of his hidden safe houses. It's a modest, secure hideout designed for emergencies. After regrouping, Martin tells Will to drive him to a meeting point where a team leader named Carrick is waiting. Unbeknownst to them, a sniper is already in position, scope aimed, finger on the trigger. At the meeting site, Martin tells Will to wait in the car. Before leaving, he takes a moment to express his pride and love, praising Will for the man he's become. Then he walks toward Carrick, tension in the air. Martin explains the dire situation. The kidnappers took his family and demand the return of a briefcase they once stole. Carrick, however, tells him the briefcase has gone missing. Martin looks stunned. As he walks back to the car, gunfire erupts. The sniper's bullet hits Martin, and he collapses. Will watches in horror, crawling to his dying father as tears stream down his face. But the sniper, Gorman, isn't finished. He locks onto Will, preparing to shoot. In a rush of adrenaline, Will grabs Martin's gun and cell phone, escaping before Gorman's men can reach him. Will races through the streets. A police officer spots him, weapon drawn, demanding surrender. Gorman shoots the officer before Will can react. Will returns fire, but more police arrive, forcing him to flee again. He runs until he reaches a tall fence, climbs over, and finds temporary refuge in a nearby park. Still breathless, he's spotted by another officer on horseback. A chase ensues. Miraculously, Will outruns the horse and disappears into a public restroom, gathering his thoughts and calming down. He returns to the busy city streets, disguising himself with a stolen hat and sunglasses, and ditches the gun. Then, using his wits, he gets himself arrested at the U.S. Embassy. Inside the embassy, he pleads for help, revealing the truth about his father's death and the danger his family is in. But the official is skeptical, advising him to get a lawyer. As they talk, the official receives a phone call that seems to confirm Will's claims, but he doesn't share the details. Defeated, Will exits the embassy, only to find Carrick waiting in her car. She claims to be a friend of Martin, insisting she wants to help. Though hesitant, Will gets in, lured by her knowledge and calm demeanor. As the car moves, Carrick starts asking about the briefcase. Her tone changes. Will grows suspicious. Faking illness, he opens the door and dives out of the moving car, disappearing into the crowded streets. He hops onto a bus, putting distance between himself and danger. Martin's phone keeps ringing. On the other end is a chilling voice. Then, Lori's voice, shaky, desperate, asks for Martin. Will has to break the news that Martin is dead. Her sobs cut through the call. The captor, unmoved, still demands the briefcase. Determined to act, Will contacts one of Martin's old allies, Diego. He's told to meet Diego's niece, Lucia, at Diego's office. Armed and alert, Will meets Lucia, who seems nervous but prepared. Suddenly, agents working for Carrick ambush them. Lucia strikes with a knife, giving Will time to fight back. The enemy is wounded but continues to battle. Will fights fiercely, using every ounce of strength. But he is outnumbered. Worn and battered, Will finally collapses, overwhelmed by exhaustion as the fight rages on around him. Lucia, still rattled from the fight, pointed her gun at Will, suspecting he might be a threat to Diego. But we quickly stepped in, explaining the dangerous situation we were all entangled in and desperately asked for her help in finding Diego. Though clearly reluctant and still shaken, Lucia finally agreed. The three of us made our way to Diego's apartment. As we approached his door, something immediately fell off. The entrance was ajar. Will, sensing trouble, drew his gun and stepped inside cautiously. What he found turned his blood cold. Diego's lifeless body lying motionless on the floor. Lucia gasped, the shock hitting her like a punch to the gut. Will pulled her close, trying to quiet her sobs, knowing the situation was still volatile and dangerous. A faint noise came from the kitchen. Will crept toward it, gun drawn, and what he saw next left him stunned. Carrick and Gorman standing there, calm yet visibly tense. Fueled by a mix of rage and desperation, Will pointed his weapon at them and demanded answers about his father's death. Carrick, unbothered, explained with eerie calm that Martin had been considering returning the mysterious briefcase to their enemies. That kind of betrayal, she said, was something they couldn't allow, and so Martin had to be eliminated. Then came an offer. Carrick said she'd help Will find his family, but only if he told her everything Martin had ever said about the briefcase and the people connected to it. The atmosphere was thick with tension, but before anyone could answer, Lucia burst into the room, guns blazing. Chaos erupted. Bullets flew as Will and Lucia made a frantic escape, Carrick and Gorman hot on their heels. They ended up on a rooftop with no way down. Thinking fast, Will fashioned a rope from what he could find, tying it around Lucia to lower her to safety. Just as he began lowering her, Gorman fired, hitting Will in the shoulder. Lucia landed safely on the ground and was helped by a nearby stranger. Above, Will clung to the rope, injured and barely conscious. With great effort, he finally dropped to the ground, wounded but alive. Lucia raced to her motorbike, helped Will aboard, and they sped away into the night. But Will's condition was worsening rapidly, and they had no time. Carrick found them again, forcing another high-speed chase. Just as she aimed for the kill, a group of unsuspecting bystanders blocked her line of sight, giving Will and Lucia another slim chance to escape. Lucia brought Will to a nightclub she trusted. Inside, She begged a friend with medical knowledge for help. At first, her friend hesitated, nervous about getting involved, but Lucia's desperation broke through. Together, the friend and some others assessed Will's injury. They found no bullet, but the bleeding was bad. They had to cauterize the wound. The pain knocked Will out cold. After several agonizing hours, Will woke up, still in great pain. Lucia sat nearby, scrolling through his phone. She stumbled upon a photo of Martin. When Will confirmed he was dead, Lucia went pale. Then she dropped a bombshell. She had known Martin too, but by a different name, Tom. He had been her father, which meant Martin wasn't just Will's father. He was Will's half-brother. Shocked and still processing this new family twist, the two boarded a train headed for the location where the briefcase exchange was supposed to take place. Will, still reeling from the truth, decided he needed to go alone. Lucia understood. She told him she'd be waiting at the nightclub, ready to help whenever needed. When Will reached the destination, he scanned the area carefully, trying to spot the contact. A mysterious man appeared beside him, speaking in a low voice, telling Will to act normal and follow him. Will complied, cautiously entering a parked car and sitting in the front seat. His mind raced with questions about his missing family, but the man wasn't interested in answers. In an instant, he lunged, choking Will until he blacked out. When Will came to, he was tied to a chair, being beaten by masked captors. He tried to explain, tried to convince them that Martin was already dead. That's when the leader revealed himself, Zahir. Zahir, a rogue intelligence operative, explained the truth. The mysterious briefcase was part of a plan to expose a deeply corrupt CIA agent. Martin had once worked with them, but eventually turned on them, stealing the briefcase. The CIA and an unknown faction called KX had been trying to bury the evidence and silence everyone involved, including Martin. Will told Zahir that Martin was dead, betrayed by the very agency he had tried to undermine. Zahir nodded gravely and revealed something else. Will's family was still alive, but being held hostage. Their fate now rested on Will. If he wanted to save them, he would have to lure Carrick into the open before the planned briefcase sale. Fail, and Zahir promised to hand Will's family over to the CIA. Will had no choice. Once again, he was knocked out and tossed out of a moving car, this time with a gun, just outside the city. Wounded and dazed, he made his way back to Lucia's nightclub. When she saw him, relief flooded her face. Together, they regrouped and plotted how to draw Carrick out. As they discussed their plan, the club owner, an old friend of Diego's, overheard them and offered his help. Lucia had an idea. She used her credit card to pay for drinks, leaving a digital trail they hoped Carrick would follow. Minutes later, Gorman appeared. But the club's staff, already suspicious, recognized him and ambushed him. A brutal fight broke out, but eventually they subdued Gorman with a taser. They dragged him to the basement, where the real interrogation began. Will demanded to know where the briefcase was and when the exchange would happen. Gorman stayed silent. Enraged, Will beat him and ordered the others to rough him up even more. Then they staged a fake escape. Gorman escaped the basement, unaware he was being tracked. He took a car and drove off. Will and Lucia followed. Gorman led them through back streets until he met up with Carrick. They drove away, unaware that Will was right behind them. They arrived at an underground parking lot where Carrick met with the buyers. Will told Lucia to stay in the car while he observed from a distance. Just as Carrick was about to hand over the briefcase, Zahir and his agents stormed in, shouting for Will to surrender. Everything exploded into chaos. Will yelled out, asking where his family was. Carrick, hearing the commotion, panicked and shot the buyers dead. Gunfire erupted. In the confusion, Gorman grabbed the briefcase and made a break for it. Will sprinted after him. The two clashed violently in the parking lot. As they fought, a hidden agent appeared and shot Gorman. Lucia, crashing her car into Gorman's vehicle, made sure he wasn't getting away again. Gorman, bleeding out, looked up at Will and muttered how ironic it was that Will would be the one to end it all. Carrick arrived just as Gorman died. She ran toward the briefcase and started shooting at Will, forcing him into cover. She grabbed the case and escaped, calling Will an amateur as she sped away. Will and Lucia gave chase, refusing to let her disappear. The high-speed pursuit led them into a park. Carrick began firing out her window, forcing Will to back off briefly. Thinking she'd lost them, Carrick entered a busy street, but Will spotted her. He rammed into her car, crashing both into a nearby store. A crowd gathered as Carrick climbed out, shooting wildly, not just at Will, but at innocent civilians. Will and Lucia, injured but determined, got into another car and sped away again. Carrick followed relentlessly. Their vehicles collided again, both flipping violently. Carrick emerged, briefcase in hand, and walked toward the injured Will and Lucia. As Will reached for his gun, she mocked him. She raised her weapon to kill him, but before she could fire, a shot rang out. Zahir and his agents appeared, guns drawn. They secured the area, the briefcase, and most importantly, Will and Lucia. Zahir helped Will up and led him to an emotional reunion with the family he thought he'd lost forever. Tears flowed as Will embraced his loved ones, the weight of everything they had endured crashing down. Zahir, quieter now, said something unexpected. He believed Martin, despite all his flaws and secrets, would be proud of Will's courage. Later, they visited Lucia in the hospital. Lori and Josh welcomed her like family. But their peace was short-lived. A CIA official approached Will, handing him a passport and offering him a way back home, a life of safety if he chose it. Will, still haunted by the mystery of the briefcase, asked what was inside. The official didn't give a clear answer. Instead, he offered a cryptic suggestion. If Will truly wanted to know, he'd have to get more involved with the CIA. So the moral of the story? When life throws you spies, secret briefcases, shocking family ties, and high-octane car chases, remember this. Laughter might be the best spy gadget, and a group hug can disarm even the most cunning enemy. Thanks for watching. See you in next video.